Hello, everyone. This is Jackie Luqman. Welcome to the midweek edition of Live and Coffee Current Events and Politics in Luqman Nation. As you can see, I am solo for right now. Mr. Luqman is on his way from work. He is what is designated as an essential worker, so you should know that I am always very worried about him and his safety. But he is on his way in from work. He will be here shortly. How are y'all doing? How are you holding up in the midst of, oh, well, what week is this? 14, I think, of the COVID-19 pandemic, quarantine, lockdown, shelter in place, whatever you want to call it here in the United States, that was implemented too late, and that is not uniform across the nation, so that's going to cause problems. We're going to talk about that a little bit tonight. But yeah, thanks a lot for joining us, everyone. We will ask you to join us every Sunday. That's our regular showtime. We try to keep that as a regular showtime. Life happens, and sometimes, but join us on our regular showtime is Sundays at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. We decided to do some midweek shows because of the interesting times that we are in. And if you would please subscribe to us here on YouTube, subscribe to Luqman Nation, invite your friends over on Facebook, like our page, share our content, start a watch party with our videos. And if you like the content that you see and hear in Luqman Nation, please consider becoming a patron. You can support Luqman Nation through Patreon for $3, $5, $7 a month, or whatever you see fit to provide us with to support us. We are always looking to upgrade our equipment, improve our production capability, expand our bandwidth, all kinds of good stuff, bring you new and interesting guests. And when things go back to the ability for us to move around, we do like to travel and do some on location stories that we find interesting and that we think you will find interesting too. So please consider becoming a patron of Luqman Nation. You can find us on patreon.com/Luqman Nation, LuqMannation. All right, folks, so we left off Sunday beginning the discussion about the racial disparities in the way COVID-19 is affecting certain groups of people. We didn't get to play this video last week, so we're going to start with this video. Now, it's a little long. It's about 4 minutes. I'm going to try. It's actually like 5.5, 6 minutes long. Not going to play the whole thing, but I want to play the whole video for you so that you get the context of everything that was said, and then we're going to talk about how that was messy. And then we're going to get into Trump versus Corona and what that really means in electoral politics and what it means in general. So let's check this video out. Let's see if I can cue this up for you.
Yesterday I met with 2,000 Hispanic leaders from their communities, and today the Vice President led a phone call that I was on with hundreds of African American leaders, including the Reverend Jesse Jackson, including Derek Johnson of the NAACP, including the National Medical Association and the Black Nurses Association, to talk about some of the alarming trends we're observing regarding the impact of COVID-19 on communities of color. And you've heard the stats in New York City. Hispanics represent the majority of deaths. In Milwaukee County, blacks are 25% of the population, but almost 50% of the cases and 75% of the deaths. So what's going on? Well, it's alarming, but it's not surprising that people of color have a greater burden of chronic health conditions. African Americans and Native Americans develop high blood pressure at much younger ages. It's less likely to be under control and does greater harm to their organs. Puerto Ricans have higher rates of asthma, and black boys are 3 times as likely to die of asthma as their white counterparts. As a matter of fact, I've been carrying around an inhaler in my pocket for 40 years out of fear of having a fatal asthma attack. And I hope that showing you this inhaler shows little kids with asthma all across the country that they can grow up to be Surgeon General one day. But I more immediately share it so that everyone knows it doesn't matter if you look fit, if you look young, you are still at risk for getting and spreading and dying from coronavirus. The chronic burden of medical ills is likely to make people of color, especially, less resilient to the ravages of COVID-19, and is possibly, in fact likely, that the burden of social ills is also contributing. Social distancing and teleworking we know are critical, and you've heard Dr. Birx and Dr. Fauci talk about how they prevent the spread of coronavirus, yet only 1 in 5 African Americans and 1 in 6 Hispanics has a job that lets them work from home. People of color are more likely to live in densely packed areas and in multi-generational housing situations, which create higher risk for spread of a highly contagious disease like COVID-19. We tell people to wash their hands, but a study showed 30% of the homes on Navajo Nation don't have running water. So how are they going to do that? In summary, people of color experience both more likely exposure to COVID-19 and increased complications from it. But let me be crystal clear. We do not think people of color are biologically or genetically predisposed to get COVID-19. There is nothing inherently wrong with you, but they are socially predisposed to coronavirus exposure and to have a higher incidence of the very diseases that put you at risk for severe complications of coronavirus. But as the Vice President shared on the call this morning, this history, and I want you to hear me say this, it does not have to be our nation's future. We're taking steps now in the midst of the COVID-19 pandemic to reach, protect, and strengthen all communities impacted by this disease, and especially our communities of color. More details will be forthcoming, but we are actively working, as the Vice President and the CDC Director laid out today, data collection, targeted outreach to communities of color, and increasing financial, employment, education, housing, social, and health supports so that everybody has an equal chance to be healthy. And I want to close by saying that while your state and local health departments and those of us in public service are working day and night to help stop the spread of COVID-19 and to protect you regardless of your color, your creed, or your geography, I need you to know you are not helpless. And it's even more important that in communities of color, we adhere to the task force guidelines to slow the spread. Stay at home if possible. If you must go out, maintain 6 feet of distance between you and everyone else, and wear a mask if you're going to be within 6 feet of others. Wash your hands more often than you ever dreamed possible. Avoid alcohol, tobacco, and drugs. And call your friends and family. Check in on your mother. She wants to hear from you right now. And speaking of mothers, we need you to do this, if not for yourself, then for your abuela. Do it for your granddaddy. Do it for your big mama. Do it for your pop-pop. We need you to understand, especially in communities of color, we need you to step up and help stop the spread so that we can protect those who are most vulnerable.
Okay, I think that was enough of that garbage. I think that was just enough of that foolishness. And let me tell you why a lot of what he said was absolute foolishness. First of all, he started off just fine. He, by the way, is the Surgeon General of the United States, and poor Mr. Luqman is tied up somewhere, and he's online watching. So everybody wave to Mr. Luqman as he's trying to get home. Yeah, so this is the Surgeon General of the United States, and he started off okay. You know, he was kind of giving some facts about the higher propensity of pre-existing conditions in African American, Latino, and he didn't really mention them, but Native American communities also, because Native American communities also suffer from a higher incidence of pre-existing conditions like heart disease and diabetes, and it's all tied to the same structural racism that Black people experience that cause us to suffer from these diseases at a higher rate. Now, what's going on, Uncle Brother, over there on YouTube? What's going on? It's good to see you. And before I get started, Chanel Pittman, Veronica Ankrum, Wendy Sehor, and Marsha Yanakovich Vania. Thank you so much for joining us over on Facebook. Share the video, share. Invite your friends, because we're going to have a really good conversation about some of these issues. Now, this guy, he suggested that the likely burden of social ills contributes to the outsized rate at which Black people, Latino people, and Native people are dying from COVID-19. The social ills that these groups of people that we face, they're not likely contributors to the fact that we are dying in higher percentages than white people from this virus. No, it is the social ills. It is the history of structural racism in this country, because you have to understand the reason more Black people suffer from high blood pressure, diabetes, heart disease, and other kinds of pre-existing conditions that are not well under control is because we live in a capitalist country in which healthcare is not a human right. So if you have money, you have good healthcare. If you have a good paying job, you probably have better healthcare, but not the good health care that you could get, not the platinum plan that you could get if you could just pay out of pocket for the highest premium. But even if you have a job, that does not mean that you have access to health care, because there are millions, hundreds of millions of workers in this country who do work, who have jobs, but who do not have health care through their employer. And if they do, then they have to opt into the least expensive plan because they simply cannot afford the quality health care that costs more money. So most people who are insured in this country, who have health insurance, receive that health insurance through their jobs. And the less money people are paid on those jobs, the less likely they are to have health insurance through those jobs. So there are millions of low-wage workers in this country who are working full-time, or who are working 2 full-time or 2 part-time jobs or 2 full-time jobs, and they still don't have health insurance because the companies they work for don't provide it, and they don't make enough money to pay for health insurance separately. Now, the Affordable Care Act was supposed to bridge that gap, but you still have to buy into the ACA exchange. And let me tell you something. Let me be really clear about the ACA. Yes, it did provide health insurance to millions of people who didn't have it before. However, it still left millions of Americans without insurance coverage because, again, you have to buy into the exchange. And if you can't afford the coverage, you don't get it. I am sitting here telling you that for me and my husband, when we tried to buy into the exchange, we were looking at $1,000 a month through the ACA. $1,000 a month. We couldn't afford that. So in between gigs, and I'm just going to tell you some of our personal stories so you can understand that it's not just you. You haven't done anything wrong if you don't have health insurance. You haven't done anything wrong if you are not able to afford to pay for preventative health care, because that's what this is really about. You see, we don't have a healthcare system in this country that prioritizes preventative health care. It's all about making a profit off of sick people. All right? So that's why we have health insurance, because they don't intend for you to be healthy, because it all ties into this ecosystem of inequality that we have in this country that disproportionately affects people of color, Black people, Latino people, Native people. There's Mr. Luqman calling. Black people, Latino people, Native American people who just don't have the resources, don't have the money to be able to afford decent health insurance, who don't live in neighborhoods where there are nice grocery stores with decent organic food. Uh, Let me call him back because he's trying to call in because he's stuck where he is. Hold on. Let's see if I can get him on speaker if you can hear him. So,
Hey, I was trying to call in. I pulled over.
oh, hi.
Hey,
Hey, I hope everybody can hear Mr. Luqman. Please let me know if you can hear him clearly. Say something, hun, so the people know that you're all right.
say something, hon, so people can know that you're all right. I was on this quest for this melatonin, as
Yeah.
I said before.
Yeah, it's real in the Luqman household. I have insomnia, which is exacerbated by premenopause and anxiety, and we are in the middle of some really seriously anxious times. So I have not been sleeping. It has been driving Mr. Luqman up the wall. So, and apparently everybody else ain't sleeping either because there's no melatonin to be found.
No, I went to, what, 3 CVS's now? And it's
Wow.
like, oh my God. I said, man, everybody must can't sleep.
Oh my gosh. So, yeah. So, we were talking, hun, about this Surgeon General's video and the things he said about, black people needing to take extra precautions to protect ourselves from the virus. And, was talking about how this the structural racism in this country that does not
Right,
provide for a true health care system for all people, from the fact that most poor black people, from the fact that most poor people in general live in neighborhoods that are not serviced by grocery stores that have decent quality food, where we can't get fresh produce in a lot of places. A lot of poor people live in food deserts across the
right.
country. And that disproportionately affects a large percentage of black, Latino, and Native people. Not saying that it doesn't affect white people. It's just more of us who live in those kinds of conditions already. And we live in.
Well,
Yeah, go ahead.
no, I was going to say, I don't want to leave out poor whites either.
Yeah,
Because,
no, no.
yeah, because as a long distance truck driver, I used to go through Appalachia and some parts in this country where the poverty rate among a lot of so-called white people, and I need to say so-called because we need to get out of this. We need to stop perpetuating this made-up thing of race. This was something that was invented by racists, and we need to stop perpetuating. But that's why I say so-called whites. But anyway, that's something else. But no, I mean, you're right, Jackie. I mean, one of the things that really bothers me when I hear certain discussions involving, our communities is the word disadvantaged, is the word underserved, and I'm like, well, why is it like that? Why is it that we're comfortable, or the people in power are comfortable in normalizing that our communities are underserved, disadvantaged? I mean, what is that? And the Surgeon General's comments, and you and I was talking about this before, is once again pathologizing black behavior.
Right.
And that's the thing. We dealt with that, and just because it's coming from a black face doesn't make it any better.
Exactly.
It doesn't. I mean, I don't know whose idea it was to say, oh well, we'll accept that better. But I don't care if it is coming from a black face. It's once again perpetuating this myth that somehow whatever we do that's considered harmful is worse than what everybody else does.
Right. Right.
And I think that we need to push against that. I think that what he is saying is, I understand the intentions behind it, but why separate us from the rest of the population, and why separate us as if our behavior is any worse than anybody else? He didn't say anything about the white kids that's hooked on opioids.
Precisely.
They need to remember grandma and uncle, this and that, and the other. Stop shooting dope.
Right.
So I mean, and here it is. It's more of them, and it has always been white people than it is blacks. But yet, it's this myth that's perpetuated that all we do is sit around and listen to and tell jokes, listen to music, and get high.
Exactly. I mean, and that's the whole thing. He talked about the higher prevalence of diseases among of these pre-existing conditions among black people, but he didn't talk about the structural racism, the fact that we live in segregated neighborhoods where we don't have access to quality health care, the lack of access to health insurance for poor people who are in low-wage jobs. A higher percentage of those people are black and Latino people. Not that white people aren't in these jobs. Understand what we're saying. We're saying that a higher percentage of our population, black folk, are overrepresented in these situations, right? So, but even as these things are true and the data's out there, it's not a secret. We all know it. This dude stands there and he's like, well, black people have these pre-existing conditions and their conditions aren't controlled. And maybe there's some social issues that might likely contribute to that, but he didn't talk about what they were. But then he goes into telling black folks in particular, like you said, hon, to stay away from alcohol and what did he say? Smoking, alcohol, and drugs.
Yeah, smoking, alcohol, and drugs, and because we gotta remember, what was the word he used?
What? Oh, do it for your abuela.
Yeah, abuela, and do it for Big Mama.
Yeah, do it for Big Mama and do it for Pop, and like seriously. So like all of the white people who have died from COVID-19, none of them smoked, none of them drank, none of them did drugs. All the black people who died of COVID-19 were smokers, drinkers, and drug addicts. Seriously, he called out black and Latino people for specifically having to avoid those behaviors, as if those behaviors are the reasons we are dying disproportionately from this virus, and they're not. So,
but it also, right, I'm sorry.
No, you go ahead.
No, I was going to say, but it also shows you how you don't need white people to perpetuate white supremacy. That's how deeply ingrained it is in this society. That's how deeply ingrained it is in the DNA of this country that you have people who look like you and me that's perpetuating the same thing.
Right. Exactly. I'm over here, hon. If it looks a little weird, because I know you're looking at the video too. I'm doing comments on both platforms. This is how we do in Luqman Nation. Listen, we the show must go on regardless, no matter what. Maurice is on the chat. He said, I'm on the check-in. What's going on, Maurice? Manny said they can hear you loud and clear, hun. Yeah, Kenda Ruop just joined us on Facebook. So yeah, listen, what this guy?
I love that name.
What, Kenda?
Yeah, Kenda Ruop sounds like one of them new age rap stars.
And now on the mic, Kenda Ruop.
Exactly. That's a real cool name, though.
And she's a real cool person. She is absolutely a real cool person. So, I mean, yeah, this Surgeon General, that stuff that he said was just real problematic. And it's fed into this narrative that a lot of nasty white supremacists and some really uninformed black folks who have some serious class issues are feeding into as well when they co-sign on this stuff. And, people are talking about, black people are obese and that's why they're dying from COVID-19. None of those white people who died from COVID-19 were fat, for real?
You know how many fat, poor white people I see all the time?
Lord have mercy. Come on now. Look, we're not trying to offend anyone here in Luqman Nation, but y'all know how we keep shit real in here. We don't have time to be sugarcoating this foolishness, because y'all gonna keep getting us killed.
How can I offend anybody when I'm fat? So,
we two fat people.
But that's like, black people talking about, well, I can say the N-word word and you can't. Well, I could talk about fat people because I'm fat.
That's right. I mean, we talk about two fat people, and look, both of us have pre-existing conditions. I am hypertensive. And I don't mind telling my business, but I'm not gonna tell you my husband's business because
I can say
you just don't need to
look,
know everything,
I'm a diabetic and I'm hypertensive too.
right?
And a lot of that is not, and I'm glad you brought up about the environmental factors because a lot of that is not just because, we was eating Big Mama's cooking all the time. A lot of that is the fact,
Exactly.
you know what I mean? A lot of that is the fact that we didn't have, we were denied a lot of choices that, that more affluent communities were able to have. You know what I mean? I mean, right now, here it is, 2020,
Mm-hmm.
and our choices is that, you go to a carryout, and where the Chinese restaurants refry your chicken is already fried, and they refry your chicken, and then, and Whole Foods, right, and Whole Foods and stuff, they refuse to come into our communities, even
Right.
when we go out of our way to petition for them to come.
Right. And then when they do come into our communities, it's after they've gentrified the communities, and the poor black and Latino folks who might be left in the community can't afford to shop at Whole Foods. That's why I've always called Whole Foods whole paycheck, cuz you can't buy no groceries at Whole Foods. And I have a quote unquote good job. This was even before I started the gig at Sputnik. I still had a pretty decent job and I made pretty decent money. And I still couldn't shop every week at Whole Foods and feed the both of us and the dog. Come on, man. Whole paycheck ain't set up like that. No, it's all this organic, this, that, and the third, and half that stuff. What they find out about the foods that are labeled organic, they're not. You're paying for look. You're paying for a label. You don't know what this stuff. But anyway, that's a whole nother discussion.
Right. Don't get me started on that.
I know, because we can go on about that for just and we garden. I garden, so I understand what organic means, and I'm trying to tell y'all they're using pesticides in that stuff. So okay, but that's another discussion. I know that's gonna make some people mad, but yeah, this Surgeon General really did feed into a bunch of hateful, racist stereotypes about black people being more susceptible to this virus because of our fucked up amoral behavior, and it's just garbage. It is absolute garbage. You mean to tell me these white kids who are strung out, like you said, hun, on heroin and on meth, you mean to tell me they're not at risk for contracting and contracting and dying from this virus? Come on.
Well, this is the reason why we have this kind of disconnect with our white brothers and sisters who don't understand when we say white privilege. They say I don't have white privilege because I pay taxes and I live paycheck to paycheck, but that's not what we mean by white privilege. This is a perfect example of white privilege when you can have poor white kids, who, addiction is a disease. So they suffer from a disease, but yet it's like, we're the ones that get criminalized. We're the ones that get pathologized.
Right.
And even though the numbers of drug usage amongst us is lower, but yet we wear the tag and the stigma.
Right, because like you said, hun, it's a disease. Society views it as a disease that garners sympathy and demands treatment, medical treatment for white people, but for black and Latino people, it's pathological amoral behavior. So,
Right, exactly.
I mean, it is unfortunate that we're having to combat these narratives at this time, but it's also par for the course. This is what this country is. And the messed up thing is, hun, that we are seeing black people really be hard on young black kids who are not adhering to the social, I hate the term social distancing. I really do. It's physical distancing. We're not social distancing. This is That what we're doing is telling other people to stay the fuck away from me. And we are staying the fuck away from other people. That's physical distancing. There's nothing social about this. You can't come to my house. If I have to go out, you need to stay away from me. I'm going to stay away from you. We're not going to touch each other. We're not going to be in breathing space. It's physical distancing. Stay away from me. But
right.
we're seeing some... Not and it's not a lot. I'm not gonna say it's a lot, but if you look at certain Facebook pages, if you look at certain YouTube videos, you would think it's just it's another kind of pandemic with all these black folks just congregating all over the place willy nilly, all out in the open. It's happened in some instances, but again, you have to understand that in our lifetime, my husband and I. Abdus and I are 50, what are you, 54? You'll be 54 this year?
Yeah.
We'll be 54 and 53. I'll be 53 this year. We've never seen anything like this in our lifetime. I just kind of wrap my head around why COVID-19 is so much more dangerous than a really bad seasonal flu or pneumonia. Sometimes it takes me a minute to understand the science, and I'll tell you why that is in a minute. But if it took me this long to get, okay, yeah, this really is screwed up. Your average teenager who, first of all, thinks that they're never going to die in the first place. Because what teenager has not felt like they are invincible if they don't already have some type of illness? Most teenagers do. Well, maybe this generation doesn't because of the crappy times that we live in with kids killing each other and school shootings, and maybe it's a whole different time. But when we were kids, we thought we were invincible. We thought that nothing could ever happen to us, that our little teenage lives would go on forever. So you've got these different kinds of a different social situation in this generation of people who've never seen this before, who have never been under a quarantine of any kind, who've never been in a society where there's been a pandemic that's affected them. And you're telling them now that they got to stay at home all the time? And again, you're talking about a population of people that disproportionately suffers under poverty, where Black and Latino people and youth we got a 40% poverty rate among Black people. It's not much lower among Latinos, 50% among Native Americans. So you've got a group of younger people growing up in these communities who are housing insecure, they're food insecure. They don't have educational opportunities because that's been taken out of our neighborhoods. A lot of these kids don't have anywhere stable to stay, and you're going to tell them to shelter in place where? With whom? So, yeah, go ahead, hon.
Well, I was going to just comment briefly on what you just said about the whole physical separation, distancing, or social distancing. We've always been socially distant.
Ooh, come on now.
Yeah, because look, we're the most. The United States is the most segregated country. Look, we talk that stuff about we're all Americans and stuff, but yet here it is. We live on. We're balkanized. You and I live in Ward 8 and Ward 7 and any Black community. Besides gentrification, you don't have too many white people living around you.
That's true.
Except the ones that couldn't leave after the riots. And all of the social ills that we suffer as people of color. That's part of being socially distant because we're forgotten about.
Oh my gosh.
So this is nothing new in this country.
You just said a word. You just said a whole damn word right there. And I couldn't pinpoint why I hate that term, social distancing, but that's why. Because we've always lived under social distancing. Always.
What was Jim Crow? What was all the
social distancing? It was social distancing.
Yeah, there was a brief historical lesson, but there was places in this country where Black people had to walk in the street when white people came on the sidewalk. Is that not social distancing?
Oh my gosh.
What was colored water fountains and segregated parks. Wasn't that all social distancing?
Mm.
So I mean, so this is nothing new. It's just that what Corona did is just expose all of the cracks in the midst of what this country was thought they were about, and it just exposed all that, and it just exposed what type of fraud that this really is. And what's really sad about it is, and I'm glad that you brought all that stuff up, is the fact that what Corona did, Corona has shown us, just like death has shown us, just like other things have shown us, that you know what, we're not different.
Hmm.
We're not different.
Mm. Mm. That was a whole word. That was a whole word right there. That was just thank you. And I also want to thank our friend Jesse Fairs over here on Facebook, because this is why we really love our friends and our family online, because they remind us that sometimes we forget stuff. Listen, the Luqmans, we don't know everything, and we are thankful that we're surrounded by a bunch of people and supported by a bunch of people through our online community who know a heck of a lot more about other things that we have no experience with. So I really
we have the smartest audience, and we said that before. We have the
yeah.
smartest listeners. Look, I'm proud of the folks that support us because, look, I check out other shows, now not to disparage their audience, but we have our audience. They are the smartest. We have the smartest audience online.
Yep, absolutely. And just really wonderful, compassionate, really powerful people. So I really want to thank Jesse Fairs in particular, who said on the comment on Facebook, do disabled communities count in there too? Yes, Jesse, they do. Thank you for reminding us that we sometimes unintentionally forget. It's this unintentional erasure that we who don't have to deal with those physical disabilities do. We don't mean it, but it's something that we have to work on. See, we've all got to work on being better at seeing the members of our community. So yeah, disabled communities are absolutely included in that marginalized group of people that are not served by this avaricious capitalistic system. And that includes LGBTQIA people as well. Yes. So also want to shout out real quick Greg Haney, who says, hi from China. It is morning there. It is morning there on Friday. At 7:38 a.m., he said things are slowly going back to normal here. Remember, folks, that we talk about this all the time on By Any Means Necessary, about how the United States has been, and ooh, this is a perfect segue for you, babe. How the United States under the Trump administration has been demonizing China about they didn't do this, that, and the third. But China locked its country down to stop the spread of the virus. Now, we may not like some of the ways that they did it, but here it is, April 17th, already over in China, and things are slowly getting back to normal there. Here, we're not even really sure how many people are dying from this virus. And we've got this president talking about opening up the country by May 1st. So, babe, take it away. This Trump versus Corona. What is that about?
Well, this guy Trump, he's been up here trying to force his will when it comes to this corona pandemic. And, briefly to say, what it's about is here you got a guy who grew up privileged, who always got in his way, who he was always in a position telling people what to do. And corona doesn't respect that. So he doesn't understand that there's just limitations to what you feel your power is. You have none when it comes to this.
Wow. I mean, we are looking at this president who now there are arguments to be made about whether Trump can actually do the things he has threatened that he's going to do, suspend funding to the World Health Organization, and he said that he would dismiss Congress so he can get his appointees approved. Now, he can threaten those things, and I'm not sure that he can actually carry them out. In his mind, he thinks he can do them. But legally, under the Constitution, according to the rules of Congress, I'm not so sure that he can do those things. But you all understand that white supremacy don't care about rules. They don't care about rules. This is why this president came into this office not really wanting to be president, but figuring, you know what? Fuck it, I'm here. I'm going to do what the hell I want. And it didn't matter whether what he wanted to do made sense, whether it was something he could do. That's why half of the stuff that he tried to implement through executive order wound up in the courts, because he actually couldn't do a lot of these things. And I suspect that this is what's going to happen with the last two things that he threatened to do. But the issue with this coronavirus thing and the way Trump is handling it, not only, Abdus, was he criminally negligent. All of the, now listen, understand, all governments lie. All right. I am not sitting here saying that there is no reason to ever question the official narrative coming from the Chinese government or the Iranian government or any government, because as the storied independent journalist I.F. Stone said, all governments lie. They all do. It's just a matter of what are they lying about and to what extent. Now, from what we have seen, China has not lied about the spread of this virus. They identified it as some kind of pneumonia in December. They did not know that it was not pneumonia until they began testing it. They notified the World Health Organization very early in I think the end of December. The World Health Organization worked with the Chinese government. The World Health Organization agreed with the Chinese government to send a delegation to investigate the outbreak, along with a delegation from the U.S. Centers for Disease Control. So, I mean, there's this whole timeline of stuff that actually happened, of proof that China did was transparent in what was going on as things were happening. Yeah, could certain people have acted in each province a little differently, of course, sure, in hindsight, but we don't see any evidence that the Chinese government was intentionally hiding any information, and we don't see any evidence that the World Health Organization was intentionally hiding information. But what we do see is that the United States government intentionally ignored the warnings from both the Chinese government and the World Health Organization, in addition to its own so-called intelligence apparatus that warned this government that this virus was spreading and it was going to be a problem in this country. This administration ignored all that. And the last thing Trump did in January was to implement the ban on travel from China. For the entire month of February, the Trump administration did nothing, because remember what they were saying? Remember what he was saying? Oh, it's going to be magic. It's just going to be like magic. It's going to be there. One day it's just going to disappear. It's not going to impact us that much. It's not going to be a problem here. We've got... Huh? We've got everything under control and all this, that, and the third. So now Donald Trump is in... He's in recovery mode. No, not recovery mode. He's in repair mode. He's trying to repair his image in the midst of this crisis. And he's trying to go up against coronavirus, Abdus. And how's he doing?
Well, it's strange that a nation that injected its own citizens with syphilis and never said nothing about it to them, and allowed them to carry around the syphilis germ. The same country that developed gynecological
Hmm. And then Abdus, you were talking earlier about how Trump is trying to defeat the coronavirus by sheer force of will. And I mean, what is why do you think he is what do you think he's going to get out of trying to do that? Cuz he is positioning himself as kind of like the savior and the hero who's going to defeat the coronavirus, but he's actually not doing it. But why do you think he's trying to do that?
Well, when Trump was running to be president, everybody kept on saying, "Oh well, this guy, he's a businessman. He would know how to turn the country around financially because he ran businesses." Nobody mentions about how many times he failed,
Mm-hmm.
oh well, this and that. Trump has always been, in my view, inept. Always. He has more failures than successes. But again, you're talking about a man who grew up in a certain class that that's used to having their way. They're used to having their way. These people don't understand democracy. They
Oh,
don't.
come on. That's right.
They hate democracy. Here it is. He feels like if he can get on that podium and lie, that somehow that lie is supposed to be a magic wand to make everything go away. This guy's a fraud. There's no true leadership from him. There's no true leadership from him. And the thing of it is that this virus, I believe, and maybe I might be going, maybe some people might think I might be going a little bit out there, but I wouldn't say that this was an act of God to humble these people. We have a story in the Bible about how Pharaoh was and how he had to be humbled through these plagues and stuff like that. Now I know a lot of people don't want to buy into that stuff, but I mean, you see something like that playing out here. And not just Trump. I mean, look at all of the right-wing leaders around the world, down in Brazil and Boris Johnson over there in the UK and all these other people who feel that they can go against go against reality. And so what's happening is the reality is facing them, and they can't do anything about it.
Mm. I mean, and especially in the case of Boris Johnson, hun, because reality kicked Boris Johnson in the ass. And now, right? Because he just got out of the hospital because he contracted COVID-19. Now, this is a man who, and I'm so glad you brought that point up. I'm so glad you brought up Boris Johnson. This is a man who campaigned on dismantling the National Health Service in the UK. Now, the NHS, like every other institution that is run by human beings, has its problems and weaknesses, but it provides free health care to every British citizen. You don't have to have money. You don't have to be rich in order to be seen by a doctor and have quality health care. Yes, your health care might be prioritized so that the most seriously ill people are seen and attended to first, but you're never going to go bankrupt from having to have a surgery in the UK like you do here.
Right.
Did you understand? Right. So now that Boris Johnson... Oh, and that's such a good point that you made about this might be an act of God, because you might be right. I mean, now that Boris Johnson has had to be in the hospital in the NHS system in the UK, and I'm sure that he also has some, expensive, fancy private insurance, because that exists in the UK also. Rich people can have extra private insurance. But he did initially have to be seen in the NHS. Oh, I bet you he's not going to go after the NHS so hard now.
Well, had he would have gotten his way, he'd have been screwed.
Exactly. Precisely. Exactly. Then you mentioned down in Brazil with Jair Bolsonaro, who I think a few days ago, him and his crazy fundamentalist Christian and Catholic white supremacist folks up in the cabinet in Brazil are they held a fast to ward off COVID-19. See, a few months ago, they were slaughtering the indigenous people because they didn't like the expression of their faith. They called those people savages. They said that because those people worshiped a God that they didn't agree with, that wasn't their white Jesus, then those people were savages and they needed to be eradicated. But now you've got this virus that's killing people, and now they're not leaning on science. These same right-wing folks that were calling the indigenous savages because of their spiritual beliefs, now these right-wing folks aren't leaning on science that God gave us, because he gave us a brain to figure these things out. No, they're praying. They're trying to pray a virus away. So I think you might be right, sweetheart, that I think this, look, I think there is an environmental component to this. There is no way that we can rape the planet at the rate that we have been doing, cutting down the rainforest, fracking, mining, polluting the earth, the water, cutting down trees. There's no way we can be doing all of this to the earth, and the permafrost is melting because of climate change. Viruses that have been buried in the permafrost for millions of years are now being exposed. We have no idea what we are waking up through our own greed. We have no idea. So I think there is an environmental component to this. The spread of these new pandemics, because this ain't going to be the last one. This ain't gonna be the last one. I think this is the dress rehearsal for climate change, actually. But go ahead, hon.
I'm glad you said that this is not going to be a new, that this is going to be more, because there have been scientists who have been warning these governments for years. I was listening to one today on a certain radio show, and he was saying that they were warning these governments back in early 2000s that a very bad pandemic was coming. Now, this is the thing that nobody wants to talk about. These scientists were saying that a lot of these viruses, especially the ones that jump from animal to human, that they're going to be more common because of the rate, and just what you just said, Jackie, because of the rate of capitalist overdevelopment that is going into areas of wildlife. Most of these viruses or pandemics come from wildlife.
Mm-hmm.
And what happens is that as human beings, not respecting the natural boundaries of things, we're exposing ourselves to these viruses. Now, one scientist said today that I was listening to, he said that there are over 1 million viruses out there that they don't even know how it's going to affect it. There's different types of Ebola. Ebola is a strain of influenza.
Jesus.
So, the more that you said about climate change, the deforestation of the Amazon and other rainforests, this is doing nothing but you're kicking dust up in your house. You don't know what you're going to have.
Exactly. I mean, and then on top of that, which is driven by capitalism, which is driven by, also neoliberalism, then you've got the expansion of neoliberalism under these right-wing, there's white ring, but under these right-wing governments that want to eliminate regulation on already destructive industry, that want to eliminate social safety nets, so there are more poor people who have no way to survive in these growing, more austere societies, and then people wonder why. Oh my God, there's another pandemic. You're right, hun. In the last time there was a major study done about, and this goes right back to the beginning of the show, and then we're going to wrap up. This goes right back to what we began talking about, the disparities in the rates of infection and death among marginalized groups of people, Black people, Latino people, Native people, Native communities, and also Yes, probably disabled people. I would actually be interested to see what those numbers are. I would be very interested to see what those numbers are. But
Oh yeah.
when when we when we look at the fact that more people who are marginalized in society already are suffering even more under capitalism and neoliberalism. The expansion of neoliberalism, which is not just Republicans who want to cut regulations, and it's not just the Trump administration that wants to eliminate regulations. Yeah, Obama was okay on some things, but Flint happened under his watch, y'all. Nobody went to jail for what happened in Flint. Nobody, that there were no additional. Yeah, he they signed the Paris climate accords, but there was no significant advancement made on addressing the existing injustices, environmental injustices that Black people, Latino people, and Native people face in this country, living in segregated neighborhoods that are dumping grounds for toxic waste, garbage. The Native communities have to deal with mining waste, polluting their water. So, we live in a society in which, and we truly we live in a world in which capitalism has already killed so many people, but so many folks made money they didn't really care that capitalism was killing people, because capitalism was killing the poor folks, capitalism was killing the brown folks, it was killing the folks at the bottom of the totem pole. But see, now capitalism is killing the rest of you, because capitalism has done what Abdus has said. It's kicked up some dust in the house, and the dust is indiscriminate in where it goes. What's in the dust is indiscriminate in where it goes and where it lands. And now more people, we hope, are starting to realize not only the limitations of capitalism, but the damage that capitalism has done around the world, and particularly because we are in this country, the damage that capitalism has done to people in this country. We do hope that some of those white folks who went out to protest uh, for the country, for the governors to open the country back up. We do.
I got something to say about that.
Oh yeah, because I think I forgot that. Please say something about that.
Well, I was following that all day today, in the truck, and I'm listening to these people saying how they as you said, they want the governors to lift this social distancing thing. But you know where you don't see protests at though?
Where?
You don't see protests in Germany. You know why?
Why?
Because the German government, please, I can't pronounce the name of this program, but the German government has a program where their unemployment where they don't have the high unemployment. You know why? Because the German government has a program where they subsidize the companies to keep their employees. Even if the employees don't go to work, they get 60% of their pay.
Yeah, a lot of countries have done that. A lot of other countries have done that.
But the thing of it is, the Germans are so successful that the rest of the EU is saying, well, maybe we need to adopt that.
Right.
So what it proves is that when, and it's written in the I think the Constitution. It's written in the Constitution that this government is supposed to provide for the general welfare. So if it's supposed to provide that, this is what the Germans are doing.
Right.
This is what other countries are doing. This is what the Chinese have done, even though this government didn't agree with it. They were promoting the general welfare. They didn't put business above the lives of their people. So if all of these flag lapel wearing politicians actually really believed in the Constitution, then they would realize that this government is supposed to provide for the general welfare of the people, not for corporations, not
It absolutely did. It was another big old handout for corporations. And what did we get? A one-time payment of $1,200 or $2,400. I
That's
mean,
supposed to last us 10 weeks now.
right. But just up north, I think Canada is paying its citizens $2,000 a month for the next 4 months, 4 or 6 months. I mean, but that's what they're supposed to do. But see, here's the thing, and this is where we're gonna close, I think, on and then when I'm gonna check out some of these comments over here on YouTube, because Greg over in China, he is on a roll up in this piece. But um those people who are protesting for the government to open the economy back up, they don't like being broke. That's all about. It's not about freedom and liberty, and no, those people are unemployed like the rest of us. They're not used to not having any money. They suddenly understand what it feels like to be poor, and they don't like it. The problem is because many of them are Trump supporters, because Ohio has already said that the governor of Ohio has already said they're going to put a plan out to open the government, open business in Ohio up by May 1, right in line with Trump's plan. They're going to feel like they're getting what they want until some of them get sick and die. Because, see, as long as it's us, it's poor, working class, black, Latino, native people who are dying, as long as it's not most of them, as long as it's a bunch of poor folk who work in the service industries, a bunch of bus drivers, a bunch of grocery store workers. Do you understand that Smithfield has had to close one of its largest pork processing plants in the country because several employees have been infected with COVID-19? And it's not just Smithfield. Other food processing plants have had to do the same thing because these companies have put their corporate profits over their people's health. And the government has encouraged it. And these Trump supporting folks doing these protests against the continued shelter in place order that are in place in their states, they're just mad because they broke now like everybody else too. That's really all this is. So
I mean, yeah, you're right. You're right.
So I'm going to give you the last word, babe. Then I'm going to read some comments. Then we're going to have dinner. Then you're going to come home and get out of the air, and we're going to have dinner.
Well, yeah, because I'm only 5 minutes from the house. But no, what I wanted to say is, and I didn't get a chance to really, because you know me, I'm more like a freestylist. But what I wanted to say is this whole pandemic. Now, you were talking about how the young people in this country, and how scary it is to everybody. You know why this pandemic is scary to everybody in America? Because it's scary to everybody in America because we ain't had to go through shit.
Well,
Be a Syrian. Be a Syrian and be bombed to the point where you can't even stay in your own country.
Come on now.
You know what I mean? So, I mean, be a Rohingya who can't stay in their country because the government has targeted them for genocide. I mean, be Rwanda back in the 90s.
Yeah.
If you was from the wrong tribe, you couldn't even come outside because you get hacked to death. We have been really protected in this country from the harms of the world, and it's been a big party for us. I mean, for most of us anyway. And now what happens is Corona has proven, in spite of this government ignoring the United Nations, talking about we're just going to go to war, you're either with us or against us, and all of this bullying of nations, all of this unilateral talk, all of this big bully talk, all of this American exceptionalism, this pandemic has shown you're part of the world too. No, I don't care how big your military is. I don't care how rich your economy is. I don't care how much exceptional you think you are. But guess what? Corona kills you too. Corona gets you sick too. And so this is basically
gosh. Woo. Yes. Yes, babe. Yes. Yes, indeed. If you were here, I'd be fanning you because you'd be on fire. So look, y'all, thank you so.
But let me say this, Jackie, real
Yeah.
quick.
Okay. Yeah.
No,
Yeah. Absolutely.
no, because I want to end on this note too.
Yeah.
We done talked about the problems. We done talked about all of the situations that this pandemic has caused. But what we need to talk about is when this is over, and it will be. Some of us up to the creator. Some of us would be around to see it. Some of us won't. But we have the chance right now to create the world that we want to create.
Mm-hmm.
See, Corona is a big eraser now. These governments can't go back to doing what they were doing unless we allow it.
That's right. That is absolutely right. This is a time full of anxiety. It's a frightening time, but it's also an incredible opportunity for us to shape the society into what we want it to be. And we cannot be afraid of these people in power, y'all. We cannot be. Sure, we should be very careful about how we conduct ourselves with this virus. But yeah, stop being afraid of these people in power, because as you have seen, they can catch a virus too. So, look, thank y'all so much for joining us tonight on our midweek broadcast of live and coffee current events and politics in Luqman Nation. Absolutely want to shout out and thank our friends and viewers over here on YouTube: Lene, Uncle Brother, Manny, Maurice, Greg Haney, all the way from China. I have to tell you what Greg said about people in the U.S. He said, people laugh at the U.S. media over here in China. We're the only people in the world who take our media seriously, our corporate media seriously. Nobody else in the world looks at much of anything that comes out of corporate media in this country and takes that mess seriously. We are a deeply propagandized and indoctrinated people, and we absolutely appreciate your comments, Greg. Thanks for joining us. Kai Watts, thanks for joining us also. And over here on Facebook, Kenda Ruop, you did say that this was going to be a mess when this came out of China in January. She did say it. I did not understand how serious it was. I will absolutely attest to the fact that Kenda Ruop said that this is going to be serious, and that lady gave me a list of stuff to get, and I did. So, look.
Yeah, Kenda was on point, man.
Kenda was on point, and thank you, Kenda. You looked out. Thank you. Jesse, Fair, Sandra, Amy, thanks for joining. Happy birthday, Sandra, Sandy. Let's see, who else we got up here on.
Good friend Heather Morris.
Oh yeah, Heather, what's going on? Hey, how are you?
I call her Faithful Heather.
Faithful Heather.
Heather's been around, man.
Yes, she has. And so has Greg Kennard. What's going on, Greg?
Oh, Greg, yes. Yep.
So look, listen, y'all, thank you so much for joining us on our midweek update this week. If you like what you hear in Luqman Nation, please consider becoming a patron. $3, $5, $7 a month, or whatever you feel like throwing our way. You can find us on patreon.com/Luqman Nation, LuqMannation. Subscribe to us on YouTube. Like us on Facebook. I'm not sure how to do the monetization for this thing on YouTube, but I'll figure it out. But whatever, man. Y'all be safe. If you don't have to go out, don't. If you do have to go out, protect yourself. Stay the fuck away from people. Tell people stay the fuck away from you. Be good to each other as always. And as always, y'all, peace. But only if you're willing to fight for it. And we got to now.
And free Maurice Cook.
What? Oh, Maurice Cook is a friend of ours who is out here on his grind in the DC Mutual Aid Society over in Ward 6. He is on his grind. So, look, thank you all so much. Join us again. We should be live again Sunday night, 7 p.m. Thanks a lot. Peace. You get yourself home, Bear.
All right, look, I'm